I just found out my son's girlfriend used to be a boy, and I have to tell my husband before dinner tomorrow. My son's girlfriend Sadie accidentally told me she's transgender while we were chopping vegetables. I used to wrestle with my dad and brother growing up, she said. Your mom let her daughter wrestle? Well, I used to be a boy, so I guess it was different, she giggled. Then her face went white. Tears rolled down immediately. He didn't tell you? No. My son has been dating her 6 months. After 8 years with a cheating ex, he finally found someone who makes him genuinely happy. This beautiful, shy, educated girl who shares his nerdy interests, who took 6 months to feel ready to meet us. I always tell people on the first date, she whispered, so we don't waste time if there's an issue. Does my son know? Of course, he's known since day one. She started to leave. I grabbed her arm. As long as you make my son happy and treat him right, I don't care. And I meant it. You'd never know. She's gorgeous, feminine, soft-spoken. My son has never been this happy. But now I have to tell my husband before dinner tomorrow. My husband is traditional. Not hateful, but traditional. Makes comments about all this gender stuff when watching the news. Nothing cruel, just confused, dismissive. He loves our son fiercely, though. Watched him suffer through that cheating ex. Worried about him being alone forever. Called my son today. He said Sadie is extremely private, just tries to run under the radar. Asked me to tell his dad sensitively because she's terrified we'll reject her. But I know my husband. His first reaction won't be kind. Not from cruelty, but ignorance. He'll say something stupid like, but she's not really a woman, or ask about surgeries. Might tell our other sons who don't know. The irony is, if she hadn't mentioned wrestling, we'd never know. She passes completely. My daughters-in-law immediately accepted her as one of the girls. Even my traditional husband liked her at the BBQ. I have 24 hours to find the right words. To protect this shy girl who whispered thank you when I said I didn't care, like acceptance was a gift instead of basic human decency. Maybe I start with, you know how you said Sadie seems perfect for him? Or just, Sadie is trans. Our son loves her. That's what matters. But this morning, everything changed. My husband came home early from golf. We need to talk about Sadie. My heart stopped. What about her? Jim's son went to college with her. Showed me something. He pulled up his phone, an old news article from 8 years ago. Local teen wins settlement against school district. The photo showed a younger Sadie, clearly pre-transition, next to another photo, current Sadie. $3 million, my husband said, for discrimination, because they wouldn't let him, her, use the girls' bathroom. So she's been lying to us. About what? Being trans? She told me yesterday. About the money. Our son is dating a millionaire who's pretending to be some shy, struggling graduate student. Maybe she doesn't want people to know. There's more. He scrolled. Jim's son found her Instagram from before she transitioned. Look at this. Photos of Sadie with another man. Recent photos. Kissing. Tagged 3 weeks ago. That's probably old. Look at the date stamp. 3 weeks ago, she was kissing this guy while dating our son. My stomach dropped. Maybe it's not what it looks like. I messaged the guy. He replied. Says they've been together 2 years. Says she told him she was visiting her sick mother this weekend. This can't be right. There's more. The settlement money? Gone. Gambling debts. She's been sued twice for fraud. Changed her name legally 3 times. He showed me court documents, criminal records, a trail of destroyed relationships and financial crimes. This isn't about her being trans, he said. It's about her being a con artist who happens to be trans. Our son would know. Would he? He's desperate for love after his ex. Perfect target. My phone rang. Our son. Mom, Sadie's ex just contacted me. Says she's dangerous. Says she destroyed his life. Took everything. Mom, he sent me proof. Photos of them together last month. She's been playing me. Honey. He says there's more. Says she's done this before. Multiple times. Targets lonely men. Makes them fall in love. Then, the line went dead. I called back. No answer. My husband tried. Straight to voicemail. Then a text from our son's phone. Everything's fine. Sadie and I talked. Don't come to dinner tomorrow. But the typing pattern was wrong. Too formal. Not how he texts. Another message. We're going away for a few days. Need space to figure things out. My husband grabbed his keys. We're going to his apartment. Now. But I knew what we'd find. The ex warned us. She's done this before. I grab my purse and Trent already has his keys. We're in the car before I can think. He backs out fast and I'm dialing Gavin again. Straight to voicemail. I try again. Voicemail. Again. Voicemail. My hands won't stop shaking. Trent's knuckles are white on the steering wheel and he's driving 15 over the limit. Those text messages keep playing in my head because they're wrong. Gavin doesn't write like that. He uses shortcuts and typos and never capitalizes anything. These messages were formal and perfect. Someone else sent them. We hit every red light and I want to scream. I call again. Voicemail. Trent finally speaks and his voice cracks. He says he's sorry for dismissing my instincts about Sadie at first. He says he let his prejudices cloud his judgment about real danger. I grab his hand because we can't do this now. We need to focus on finding our son alive. He squeezes back and drives faster. The 30-minute drive takes 22 minutes. We pull into Gavin's apartment complex and Trent parks crooked across 2 spaces. We run to the building entrance. I'm fumbling with the spare key Gavin gave me months ago. We get inside and take the stairs because the elevator is too slow. 3rd floor. His door is down the hall. We're almost there when I see it. The door to his unit is open. Not wide open, but ajar. Just a few inches. Ice shoots through my whole body. Trent pushes the door carefully and calls Gavin's name. Nothing. We step inside. The living room is wrong. Not destroyed, but disturbed. Gavin's laptop sits open on the coffee table. His phone is right beside it. Still powered on. The screen lights up with my missed calls. If he left voluntarily, why is his phone here? His keys hang on the hook by the door where he always puts them. His wallet sits on the kitchen counter, but his jacket is gone and it's cold outside. Trent moves through the apartment checking rooms. I stand frozen looking at that phone. Gavin never goes anywhere without his phone. Never. I pick it up and the lock screen shows 17 missed calls from me. 3 from Trent, 2 from a number I don't recognize. I go to his bedroom. Trent is already searching the bathroom. I open Gavin's closet. Clothes are missing. Not many, but some. His overnight bag is gone from the top shelf. I check his desk drawer where he keeps his passport. Empty. I remember he hides a backup credit card in his sock drawer for emergencies. I pull open the drawer and dig through. Gone. This wasn't sudden. Someone packed. But was it Gavin packing to run or Sadie forcing him to pack? I can't tell. Trent comes back and his face is gray. He says nothing in the bathroom suggests violence. No blood, no signs of struggle. But something is very wrong. He goes to the laptop and I follow. It's still unlocked. Trent pulls up the browser history and we both lean in. The searches are from the last hour. How to tell if someone is lying about their past. Signs of financial manipulation in relationships. Can someone take out loans in your name? Several login attempts to Gavin's bank account. Then the last search. Time-stamped 20 minutes before those weird texts. Am I in danger? Just those 4 words. My hands shake so bad I almost drop Gavin's phone. I need to call the police. I dial and the dispatcher answers. She asks what my emergency is. I try to explain about the suspicious texts and the missing items and the warning from the ex. She asks if there are signs of forced entry. I say no. She asks if there's evidence of violence. I say no, but something is wrong. She says without clear evidence of a crime in progress, they have to treat this as a potential voluntary departure. She takes our information. She says an officer will come by to take a report. I can hear in her voice this isn't their top priority. She's being professional but not urgent. I want to scream that my son is in danger, but I have no proof. Just a mother's instinct and weird text messages. She says someone will be there within the hour. I hang up and look at Trent. An hour feels like forever. I remember Hunter, the ex who warned Gavin. I scroll through Gavin's phone and find the number. I call it. He answers on the second ring and asks if we found Gavin. His voice is tight with worry. Real worry. I tell him no and explain what we found. Hunter says Sadie did exactly this to him 2 years ago. The love bombing, the shy act, the gradual financial entanglement, then the disappearance with everything he had. He says she's a professional. She studies her targets. She becomes exactly what they need. Trent takes the phone and puts it on speaker. He asks Hunter about Sadie's pattern. Hunter explains that she isolates victims from family first. That's why she waited 6 months before meeting us. She usually has multiple relationships running at the same time. Different names, different backstories. She's skilled at reading people. The settlement money disappeared into gambling debts within 18 months. Since then, she's been running cons to maintain her lifestyle. Trent asks directly if he thinks Gavin is in physical danger. There's a long pause. Hunter says he doesn't know. Sadie has never been violent that he knows of. But she's also never been caught this close to exposure before. Cornered people do unpredictable things. He gives us contact information for 2 other victims he's connected with through online forums. Both lost substantial money. Both nearly lost their sanity. I write down the numbers with shaking hands. Hunter says to call him anytime. He says he's sorry he didn't find Gavin sooner. The doorbell rings. Trent goes to answer. A police officer stands there with a tablet and a professional expression. She comes inside and looks around. She asks questions and takes notes. She photographs the apartment. She copies the laptop browser history. She explains that Gavin is an adult who appears to have left voluntarily with his belongings. Without evidence of immediate danger, they can't issue an alert or treat this as a kidnapping. She's not unkind, but she's matter-of-fact. I want to scream. She does agree to do a welfare check if we can provide possible locations. She takes photos of the apartment layout. She documents what's missing. Then I remember something. Gavin gave me access to his location sharing months ago, after his ex's cheating made him want to be more transparent in relationships. I pull out my phone with shaking hands. I open the app. Please don't be turned off. Please. There it is. His location. A blue dot moving on the highway, heading toward the state border. I show the officer immediately. Her demeanor shifts. The professional detachment becomes focused concern. She radios something I don't fully catch. She asks how long the location sharing has been active. I tell her months. She asks if Gavin knows I have access. I say yes. She looks at the moving dot and her jaw tightens. The officer grabs her radio and calls in the vehicle description and location coordinates. She explains that this gives them legal cause to stop the car and check on Gavin. But if he says he wants to leave with Sadie and seems coherent, they can't force him to come with us. Trent looks at me and we both know what we're doing without saying it. We're following that location pin ourselves. The officer tells us to stay on the phone with her as we drive and not to approach until patrol makes contact. We run to Trent's car and he peels out of the parking lot while I keep my phone open with the blue dot moving steadily away from us on the highway. We're pushing 80 miles per hour in the middle lane and that dot is still 20 minutes ahead. I watch it move north toward the state border and my hands won't stop shaking. Trent grips the wheel so hard his knuckles look white. The officer stays on speakerphone giving us updates every few minutes. Then the dot stops moving. Just stops. My heart starts pounding so hard I can feel it in my throat. Trent presses the gas pedal down further and we hit 85. The officer radios something I can't fully hear and then tells us a highway patrol unit is 3 minutes from that location. I'm praying we're overreacting. That Gavin will be mad at us for tracking him like he's a teenager. That this is all some big misunderstanding and Sadie has a reasonable explanation for everything. But my gut tells me something is very wrong, and I learned a long time ago to trust that feeling. We pull off the highway into the rest stop and I see the patrol car already there with lights off. Through the windshield of a silver sedan I can see Gavin in the passenger seat staring down at his phone. Sadie sits in the driver's seat and her hands are moving fast, talking with big gestures. The patrol officer walks toward the car slowly and professionally. She taps on the window. I watch Sadie's face change in less than a second. The angry, animated expression melts away and becomes soft and confused and sweet. The shift happens so fast and so smooth it makes my skin crawl. Trent and I stay back near our car like the officer on the phone told us to. But I can hear Sadie's voice carrying across the parking lot. She sounds worried and gentle and explains they're just taking a road trip to clear their heads after some family drama. Her voice has that shy quality I remember from when we first met her. Gavin looks up at the patrol officer and I can see how tired he looks. His face shows confusion and something else I can't quite name. But he nods and says he's fine. Says he's going with her because he wants to. The officer asks him to step out of the car to speak privately. For just 1 second, Sadie's sweet expression cracks, and I see pure anger flash across her face before the mask slides back into place. The officer walks Gavin about 15 feet away from the car. I watch my son's body language and everything about it screams wrong. His shoulders hunch forward and his arms wrap around his middle like he's trying to hold himself together. His eyes keep darting back to look at Sadie every few seconds. He's saying the right words about leaving on his own and wanting to go. But his whole posture shows fear and confusion. The officer must see it too because she leans in closer and asks something I can't hear. Gavin hesitates before answering, and that pause tells us everything we need to know. Sadie gets out of the car fast. Tears stream down her face as she walks toward Gavin, calling out his name. She says she can explain everything, says Hunter is lying about her. Says the court documents are fake, made up by people who hate trans women and want to destroy her life. Her voice trembles and breaks. Her posture looks small and vulnerable. Her eyes show desperate love and fear of losing him. The performance is perfect. I watch Gavin's expression start to soften as he looks at her. We're losing him. The manipulation is working again right in front of us. I can't stay back anymore. My feet move forward before I decide to walk. I call out Gavin's name. He turns and looks at me, and for just a second, I see my little boy underneath the confused adult. The kid who used to run to me when he had nightmares. The kid who trusted me to keep him safe. I tell him quietly that he doesn't have to decide anything right this second, that he can just come home with us for one night and think clearly without anyone pushing him either way. Sadie's voice cuts through immediately. She says I'm the one pressuring him, that his family never really accepted her, that we're using this moment as an excuse to break them up because of who she is. Trent walks up and stands next to me. He looks directly at Sadie and says something I never expected to hear from him. He says he was wrong about his first thoughts and prejudices, that his problem was never about her being transgender, but that the evidence of fraud and manipulation is real and documented and has nothing to do with her identity. He pulls out his phone and turns it toward Gavin, shows him the court records with Sadie's multiple name changes, shows him the photos with someone named Mikhail timestamped from 2 weeks ago, shows him Hunter's detailed account with dates and bank records. Gavin's face just falls apart as he looks at the screen. His expression crumbles like something inside him is breaking. Sadie's whole demeanor changes in one instant. The tears stop like someone turned off a faucet. Her posture straightens and she stands taller. Her voice goes completely cold and flat as she looks at Gavin and tells him that if he leaves with us, she'll ruin him the same way she ruined the others. She has access to his bank accounts, his social security number, his passwords to everything. She'll destroy his credit and his reputation before he can do anything to stop her. The threat comes out so calm and matter-of-fact it makes my blood feel cold. The highway patrol officer steps between Sadie and Gavin immediately. She radios for backup and tells Sadie that threatening someone is a crime. Sadie laughs. Actually laughs. She says it's not a threat at all, just a simple statement of fact about shared accounts between partners. Says Gavin gave her all that access on his own because he trusted her. She's technically right, and I can see the officer's face show frustration because she knows it too. Gavin turns away from the officer and looks directly at me with tears running down his face. He asks if I really meant what I said yesterday about not caring that Sadie is trans, or if I was just being polite because she was there. My heart breaks that he's asking this now, in this moment, when everything is falling apart around him. But I understand why he needs to know. He needs to be sure our concern is real protection, and not hidden prejudice dressed up as worry. I walk closer and tell him I meant every single word. That this has nothing to do with who she is. That this is about what she's done. About the lies and the other boyfriend and the court records showing fraud. Trent steps up beside me and nods, telling Gavin we're scared for him because the evidence is real. Gavin's shoulders shake and he wipes his eyes with the back of his hand. Another police car pulls into the rest stop with lights flashing. A woman in plain clothes gets out and walks over to our group. She's maybe 40 with dark hair pulled back and a badge clipped to her belt. She introduces herself as Detective Carlson and says she's been investigating Sadie for fraud, connected to 2 other recent cases in the area. Her voice is calm and professional but not cold. She looks at Gavin and asks if he's willing to come to the station to give a statement about his relationship and money dealings with Sadie. She emphasizes that he's not in trouble at all, that his information could help build a case to stop Sadie from doing this to other people. Gavin looks at Sadie, then back at the detective. He nods slowly and says he'll go. Sadie moves forward fast, saying she has the right to be there as his girlfriend, that they should face this together. Detective Carlson steps between them and states firmly that Gavin is free to speak to police without her present. That's when everything changes in Sadie's face. The tears stop like someone flipped a switch. Her posture straightens and she stands taller. Her voice goes completely flat and cold as she looks at Gavin and tells him he's weak and pathetic. That she wasted 6 months on him when she could have found better targets. That he was so desperate and easy to manipulate it was almost boring. The venom in her voice makes Gavin physically flinch backward. His face goes pale and his mouth opens slightly like he's been slapped. I see the exact moment he truly understands what she is. What she's always been. The highway patrol officer moves closer to Sadie and warns her to stop talking. Detective Carlson tells Gavin he can ride with her to the station. We follow Detective Carlson's car in our own vehicle, pulling out of the rest stop and back onto the highway. Trent drives and I sit in the passenger seat and neither of us speaks because there's nothing to say yet. My hands shake as I pull out my phone and text our other sons. I keep it simple. Tell them Gavin is safe but going through something really hard. Ask them not to call yet but to be ready to support their brother when we know more. Trent reaches over and squeezes my hand without taking his eyes off the road. I realize tears are running down my face. I look over and see tears on Trent's face too. We drive in silence the whole 30 minutes to the police station. At the station, Detective Carlson takes Gavin into an interview room while Trent and I wait in a small area with uncomfortable plastic chairs and old magazines. The statement takes 3 hours. Through the window in the door, I can see Gavin talking and the detective taking notes and showing him papers on her laptop. His face gets paler and paler as time passes. When they finally come out, Gavin looks like he might throw up. Detective Carlson explains that she showed him evidence from other victims with patterns exactly matching his experience. The shy introduction that took months to build trust. The 6-month courtship before meeting family. The slow way Sadie got access to finances and personal information. Then the extraction of money and data once she had everything she needed. Gavin sits down heavily in one of the plastic chairs and puts his head in his hands. Detective Carlson sits across from us and continues explaining. She says Sadie has been operating under at least 4 different identities across 3 states, that the settlement money from her discrimination case 8 years ago was real, but disappeared into online gambling within 2 years. Since then, she's been running romance scams and identity theft and financial fraud to support herself. She targets men through dating apps and LGBTQ support groups where people are ready to be accepting and trusting. The detective looks at Gavin with real sympathy in her eyes and tells him he's not stupid for falling for it. That Sadie is a professional who studies her targets and becomes exactly what they need. We leave the station near midnight with a thick folder of paperwork and instructions to check all of Gavin's financial accounts right away and freeze his credit. Gavin is silent and his eyes look empty as we drive back to his apartment. When we get there, he walks through the rooms like he's seeing them for the first time. He points out the small things he missed before. How Sadie always wanted to handle paying the bills even though they weren't living together. How she talked him out of reaching out to his ex for closure, saying it would hurt their relationship. How she acted uncomfortable at social events with his friends until he stopped inviting her and eventually stopped going himself. Trent and I helped Gavin start going through his accounts on his laptop. The damage is so much worse than we feared. Sadie opened 3 credit cards in his name over the past 2 months. All of them are maxed out for a total of $47,000 in charges. She moved money from his savings account to an account he didn't even know existed, taking $8,000. She took out a personal loan using his information for $15,000. All of it is gone. Gavin makes a sound like a wounded animal when he sees the full numbers on the screen. He starts sobbing that he was so desperate not to be alone again that he ignored every single red flag. That Sadie love bombed him exactly the way all the articles warn about. But he convinced himself it was just her being loving, because he wanted so badly to believe someone could love him that much after his ex destroyed him. I pull my grown son into my arms and hold him while he cries. Trent gets on the phone with a fraud hotline to start the dispute process. We stay at Gavin's apartment that night. Trent takes the couch and I take the guest room. Gavin goes to his bedroom, but I can hear him moving around, not sleeping. Around 3 in the morning, I hear him get up. I find him in the kitchen, standing in the dark, staring at his phone. He shows me old text messages from Sadie. Points out how she perfectly copied his interests and his values, and even his way of writing. Things he thought meant they were soulmates. Things that made him feel understood for the first time. Now he sees they were calculated moves. Studied responses designed to make him fall in love with a person who never existed. I watch him scroll through months of messages, his fingers shaking as he points out patterns I never would have noticed. He goes back to bed around 4, but I hear him tossing around, not sleeping. Trent and I stay up the rest of the night going through more of Gavin's accounts, finding 2 more credit cards we didn't know about. The sun comes up and Gavin walks out of his bedroom looking worse than when he went in, his eyes red and swollen. My phone rings at 7:30 and Detective Carlson's name shows up on the screen. She tells me they arrested Sadie at the airport last night trying to board a flight to Miami using a fake ID and someone else's credit card. The card belonged to another victim who filed a report 2 days ago. Sadie is being held on multiple charges, including identity theft, fraud, and breaking probation from a previous case in another state. Detective Carlson says Gavin's statement last night was really important because it helped them see the pattern they needed for prosecution. She thinks more victims will come forward now that Sadie is in custody and the news gets out. I thank her and hang up, then tell Gavin and Trent what she said. Gavin just nods like he expected it, like nothing can surprise him anymore. Over the next few days, we help Gavin pack up his important things and move them back to our house. He can't stand being in the apartment where Sadie played her role so well, where every corner reminds him of something she said or did that he now knows was fake. He calls his boss and asks for leave to deal with the legal and money problems, and his boss agrees right away. Gavin spends hours every day on the phone with banks and credit agencies and lawyers, his voice getting more tired with each call. Trent sits next to him during most of these calls, taking notes and learning about fraud protection and identity restoration. I hear Trent asking questions about how to freeze credit and dispute charges and protect against future theft. Gavin has to tell his story over and over to different people, and each time I see him get a little more numb to it. Some representatives are kind and helpful, but others act like Gavin should have known better or been more careful. Those calls make Gavin's shoulders slump lower. 4 days after moving home, Gavin gets a message on social media from Hunter asking if they can meet for coffee. Gavin shows me the message and asks what I think, and I tell him it might help to talk to someone who went through the same thing. They meet the next afternoon at a coffee shop near our house, and Gavin is gone for almost 3 hours. When he comes home, his face looks different, not as completely broken as before. He tells me it helped so much to talk to someone who really understands the specific shame of being conned by someone you loved. Hunter told him about a support group for romance scam victims that meets twice a month, and Gavin says he wants to go to the next meeting. I hug him and tell him I'm proud of him for being willing to get help. Detective Carlson calls again a week later with an update that makes my stomach hurt. 5 more victims have come forward with stories almost exactly like Gavin's, and the total money damage across all victims is over $300,000. The detective explains that prosecution will be complicated because Sadie operated across state lines and used multiple identities, but the evidence is really strong. She tells us Gavin will need to testify in court, which I can see scares him badly, but he agrees because he doesn't want Sadie doing this to anyone else. 2 weeks after the rest stop confrontation, Gavin gets a message on social media from someone named Mikhail. Gavin's face goes white when he reads it, and he shows me the phone. Mikhail is apologizing and saying he genuinely believed he was in an exclusive relationship with Sadie and had no idea about Gavin or any others. He says Sadie told him she was visiting her sick mother during the times she was actually with Gavin. They start messaging back and forth, comparing notes about their time with Sadie, and Gavin realizes she kept them on completely opposite schedules. When Mikhail was working nights, Sadie was with Gavin. When Gavin had evening plans, Sadie was with Mikhail. The precision of how she managed multiple full relationships at the same time is scary. Gavin starts going to therapy 3 times a week with a specialist who works with people dealing with emotional manipulation and financial abuse. His therapist helps him understand that his vulnerability after his cheating ex made him a perfect target for someone like Sadie. The therapist explains that Sadie probably studied his dating profile and early conversations to build a persona designed specifically for him, and that recognizing this doesn't mean he's weak. It means he's human and wanted connection. This perspective helps Gavin stop blaming himself quite so badly, though I can tell he still struggles with it. The financial recovery process turns into a nightmare that drags on and on. Gavin has to dispute each fraudulent charge one by one and provide documentation proving he didn't authorize them. Some credit card companies are cooperative and remove the charges quickly, but others suggest he's partially responsible for giving Sadie access to his information. During one particularly bad call where a representative keeps implying Gavin should have been smarter, Trent gets furious and takes the phone from Gavin's hand. I hear Trent's lawyer voice come out as he cites consumer protection laws and threatens legal action if they don't remove the fraudulent charges immediately. The representative changes their tune pretty fast after that. A month after everything exploded, Gavin's ex-girlfriend reaches out after hearing through mutual friends what happened. She sends a long message apologizing for how their relationship ended and for contributing to Gavin's desperation for a fresh start. She offers to provide a character witness statement if needed for court. Gavin is surprised but accepts her apology, and they meet for coffee to get actual closure this time. When he comes home from that meeting, he tells me it felt good to end that chapter properly, without all the anger and hurt hanging over it. Detective Carlson calls again to tell us that Sadie is trying to negotiate a plea deal, with her lawyer arguing that her history of discrimination hurt contributed to her criminal behavior. The prosecutor is pushing back hard, though, arguing that being a victim of discrimination doesn't excuse victimizing others, and that Sadie's calculated pattern shows clear criminal intent rather than hurt response. Gavin feels relieved he might not have to testify, but also says he wants her to face full consequences for what she did. 3 weeks after moving home, Gavin gets approved for fraud victim assistance through a nonprofit that helps with identity restoration and credit repair. They assign him a caseworker named Patricia, who guides him through the complex process of rebuilding his financial life. Having professional support takes some of the burden off our family, and Patricia is patient and kind as she walks Gavin through each step. She estimates it will take 6 to 8 months to fully resolve all the fraudulent accounts and repair his credit score back to where it was before Sadie. 3 months later, moving day arrived and Trent loaded boxes into his truck, while Gavin's brothers carried furniture down 3 flights of stairs from the old apartment. The new place sat across town in a neighborhood Gavin had never visited with Sadie, with different coffee shops and different streets that held no memories of her shy smile or calculated touches. His youngest brother installed new locks on the front door and joked about adding security cameras and running background checks on anyone Gavin brought home, and for the first time in months, Gavin actually laughed instead of just pretending to smile. We ordered pizza for lunch and ate sitting on boxes in the empty living room, and Gavin's brothers told stupid stories about their own dating mistakes until the whole room felt lighter. By evening, the basics were unpacked, and Gavin stood in his new bedroom looking out at a completely different view, and I watched him take a deep breath like he was finally able to exhale after holding it for months. The preliminary hearing happened 2 weeks after the move, and Gavin had to testify about the timeline of their relationship and how he gave Sadie access to his bank accounts and personal information. Walking into the courtroom made my stomach twist because I knew seeing Sadie again would hurt him, even though he said he was ready. She sat at the defense table in an orange jumpsuit that made her look small and vulnerable, exactly the image her lawyer wanted the judge to see, and I watched her attorney gesture dramatically while talking about discrimination and trauma. When Gavin took the stand, his voice stayed steady as he described meeting Sadie on the dating app and how she waited 6 months before meeting us because she said she wanted to be sure about the relationship first. The prosecutor asked him specific questions about when he gave her his credit card information and social security number, and Gavin explained each instance calmly, even though I could see his hands shaking slightly. Sadie's lawyer tried to suggest that Gavin willingly shared everything as gifts between partners, but Gavin pointed out the forged signatures on loan applications and credit card accounts he never knew existed. The hardest moment came when Sadie looked directly at him across the courtroom, and instead of the shy girlfriend who used to blush when he complimented her, her eyes held nothing but cold calculation like she was measuring whether he would break under cross-examination. That look reinforced everything we had learned about her, that every soft word and gentle touch had been performance designed to extract maximum value from his desperation for love. After the hearing ended, Detective Carlson pulled us aside in the courthouse hallway and told us that Sadie showed absolutely no regret during her police interviews. The detective said Sadie actually seemed proud of her manipulation skills and even asked the investigators if they wanted tips on catching other con artists, like she was offering professional advice instead of facing criminal charges. Detective Carlson explained that this kind of narcissistic behavior would help the prosecution because it showed clear intent and lack of any possibility for change or rehabilitation. Gavin listened quietly to all of this, nodding occasionally but not saying much, and I could see him processing the information in real time. On the drive home, he finally spoke, and said he was mourning the person he thought Sadie was, while accepting the reality of who she actually turned out to be, and that those were two completely different people. The next week, Gavin returned to work after his leave ended, and his boss called him into the office on his first day back. I worried they might fire him or demote him because of all the time off, but his boss surprised us by being incredibly understanding about the whole situation. Several coworkers approached Gavin privately over the next few days to share their own stories about financial fraud or manipulation they had experienced, and Gavin realized these things happen to way more people than anyone talks about openly. One guy in accounting told him about losing $30,000 to a cryptocurrency scam, and a woman in marketing shared how her ex-husband destroyed her credit during their divorce. Hearing these stories helped Gavin feel less isolated in his shame, and he started understanding that sophisticated con artists succeed because they are skilled at what they do, not because their victims are stupid or weak. His coworkers treated him normally, instead of with pity, and by the end of his first week back, Gavin told me he felt almost like himself again during work hours. 4 months after everything fell apart at that rest stop, Gavin got a notification from the Fraud Dispute Department that 70% of the fraudulent charges had been successfully removed from his accounts. The remaining 30% were still under investigation because those creditors wanted more documentation, but his credit score was slowly climbing back toward where it had been before Sadie. He spent an entire Saturday afternoon paying off the legitimate debts he had taken on while trying to recover from the fraud, and then he opened a new savings account at a completely different bank with enhanced security features and two-factor authentication on everything. Watching those account balances finally move in the right direction felt like actual progress instead of just damage control. The prosecutor called about setting Sadie's trial date for 6 months out, and she needed to prepare Gavin for his testimony in the actual trial versus the preliminary hearing. They met at the prosecutor's office and did a practice run of all the questions she would ask and what Sadie's defense lawyer would probably try during cross-examination. The prosecutor warned Gavin that the defense would try to paint him as a willing participant who gave Sadie money and access freely, and was only claiming fraud now because he regretted the relationship ending. Gavin felt anxious about facing that kind of questioning, but he also felt determined to make sure Sadie faced real consequences for what she did to him and the others. He started practicing his testimony with his therapist during their sessions, working through the emotional impact of having to recount everything again in front of a jury. Trent and I had several long conversations during this time about how we missed the signs, and whether we could have protected Gavin better from Sadie's manipulation. Our marriage actually grew stronger through this whole crisis, because we learned to talk more openly about our fears and prejudices, instead of avoiding difficult topics. Trent admitted he had been doing a lot of reading about transgender issues because he wanted to educate himself properly and understand the difference between supporting LGBTQ people and recognizing when someone uses their identity as a shield for criminal behavior. He said he felt guilty that his initial discomfort with Sadie being trans had almost made him dismiss the real warning signs of her fraud and manipulation. We talked about how we both needed to trust our instincts more when something felt wrong, regardless of whether calling it out might seem prejudiced or uncomfortable. These conversations brought us closer together instead of driving us apart, and I felt grateful that this terrible situation at least taught us how to communicate better. Gavin started casually dating again after his therapist suggested it might help him rebuild his trust in people and his own judgment. He met someone through a friend who knew his whole history with Sadie and didn't judge him for falling for her manipulation. They went on a few low-pressure coffee dates where they just talked about normal things like work and hobbies, without any of the intense connection or love bombing that had characterized his relationship with Sadie. Gavin told me he wasn't ready for anything serious yet, but it felt good to have normal human connection and conversation with someone who treated him like a regular person instead of a victim. The woman he was seeing knew to take things slow and didn't push for more than he was ready to give, which was exactly what he needed. 5 months after Sadie's arrest, both Hunter and Mikhail reached out to coordinate their testimony for the upcoming trial. The three of them met up for dinner and formed this unexpected support network, sharing coping strategies and recovery tips that only people who had been through the same specific trauma could really understand. Gavin came home from that dinner and said it was surreal to bond with people through shared pain, but their friendship helped all three of them feel less alone in what had happened. They started a group chat where they checked in on each other and shared updates about the legal process and their personal recovery. Detective Carlson called with another update that 2 additional victims from 5 years ago had come forward after seeing news coverage of Sadie's arrest. The pattern went back even further than anyone had realized, with Sadie running similar cons in different cities under different names for nearly a decade before she ever met Gavin. The prosecutor was building a case for a lengthy prison sentence based on this extensive criminal history and complete lack of rehabilitation or remorse. Detective Carlson said the new victims brought the total financial damage across all of Sadie's known victims to over $400,000, and there were probably more people out there who hadn't come forward yet because they felt too ashamed. Gavin processed this information with a mix of vindication and sadness. Vindication that the case against Sadie was strong enough to put her away for a long time, but sadness that so many people had suffered because of her calculated cruelty. 2 weeks later, Gavin met with his caseworker for what turned out to be their final session together. She pulled up his credit report on her computer screen and showed him the results of months of disputes and documentation. All but one of the fake credit cards had been successfully removed from his record, and that last one was still under investigation by the bank's fraud department. His credit score had climbed back to 702, just 15 points below where it was before Sadie entered his life. The caseworker smiled and handed him a folder full of information about credit monitoring services and identity protection tools. She told him he should be proud of himself for doing the hard work of recovery, for not giving up when the process felt impossible. Gavin thanked her and shook her hand, and when he got back to his car, he sat there for a few minutes just staring at that credit report. He had rebuilt something Sadie tried to destroy, and that felt like winning, even though he knew the emotional damage would take longer to heal than the financial mess. He texted me a photo of the credit score with a simple message that said he was getting there, slowly but surely. 6 months after that rest stop confrontation, the trial finally began. Trent and I sat in the courtroom behind the prosecutor's table, watching Gavin walk to the witness stand in his best suit. He looked nervous but determined, and when he swore to tell the truth, his voice was steady. The prosecutor asked him to describe how he met Sadie, and Gavin walked the jury through their relationship timeline with clear, calm detail. He explained how she gradually gained access to his bank accounts, his credit cards, his personal information. He described finding out about Mikhail, about the other victims, about the trail of fraud that went back years. Sadie's lawyer stood up for cross-examination and tried to suggest that Gavin had willingly given Sadie money as gifts, that this was just a relationship that went bad, and now he regretted his generosity. But Gavin stayed calm and pulled out copies of forged signatures on loan applications, screenshots of unauthorized account openings, bank statements showing transfers he never approved. He spoke directly to the jury and said he understood how it might look from the outside, but the evidence showed a clear pattern of theft and deception, not generosity gone wrong. The prosecutor told us afterward in the hallway that Gavin was an excellent witness, that his calm presentation and solid documentation made the case much stronger. The next day, Hunter took the stand and told his nearly identical story. He described meeting Sadie 3 years ago, the same shy act, the same gradual financial takeover, the same discovery of other victims when she disappeared with everything he had. Then Mikhail testified about his 2-year relationship with her, about believing he was her only boyfriend while she juggled multiple men across different cities. The pattern became impossible to deny as each victim shared the same basic story with different details. Sadie's defense lawyer tried to argue that she was a victim herself, that systemic discrimination against trans people had pushed her into desperate choices, that she made bad decisions out of survival needs rather than criminal intent. But the prosecutor countered with evidence of sophisticated planning, detailed manipulation techniques, and the sheer scale of her cons across multiple states and identities. She showed the jury bank records proving Sadie had plenty of money at various points, but chose to keep stealing anyway, that this was about control and power, not desperation. The jury members' faces grew harder as more victims testified, and I could see they weren't buying the discrimination defense. After 3 days of testimony, the judge sent the jury to deliberate. We waited in the hallway with Gavin, Hunter, and Mikhail, drinking bad coffee from the courthouse vending machine and trying not to obsess over every minute that passed. 4 hours later, the bailiff called us back in. The jury filed into their box with serious expressions, and the judge asked for their verdict. The 4 women stood and read guilty on all counts: identity theft, fraud, theft by deception, violating probation from a previous case in another state. Sadie sat at the defense table and showed absolutely no emotion as each guilty verdict was read. Her face stayed blank and cold, like she was watching something happening to someone else. The judge thanked the jury and scheduled sentencing for 2 weeks out, and the prosecutor leaned over to tell us she expected 8 to 12 years given the number of victims and the extensive pattern. Gavin let out a breath he seemed to have been holding for months. 2 weeks later, we were back in that same courtroom for sentencing. The judge said she would hear victim impact statements before deciding on the sentence, and Gavin had decided he wanted to speak. He walked up to the microphone set up in front of the judge's bench and pulled out a piece of paper with notes he'd written. His hands shook a little, but his voice stayed strong. He talked about the psychological damage of having his trust turned into a weapon, about lying awake at night wondering how he missed all the signs, about the financial stress of rebuilding his credit while working full-time and going to therapy. He said Sadie's actions made him question his judgment in every area of his life, made him afraid to trust anyone or believe in genuine connection. But then he said he was recovering, that he refused to let her actions define his future, and that he hoped she would get help in prison for whatever drove her to hurt so many people. The judge listened carefully and made notes, then looked at Sadie and asked if she wanted to make a statement. Sadie stood but said nothing, just shook her head. The judge took a deep breath and said she had reviewed all the evidence and victim statements, and that she saw a clear pattern of calculated predatory behavior targeting vulnerable people. She sentenced Sadie to 10 years in prison with mandatory restitution to all victims. Sadie's face stayed blank as the bailiff led her away in handcuffs. Outside the courthouse, Gavin stood on the steps and just breathed the fresh air. He told Trent and me that he felt a weird mix of relief and sadness. Relief that Sadie couldn't hurt anyone else for a while, couldn't run her cons and destroy more lives. But also sadness that someone would choose to live this way, would choose cruelty and manipulation over genuine human connection. We went out to dinner that night as a family, with Gavin's brothers joining us at his favorite restaurant. His youngest brother raised his glass and said he was proud of Gavin for surviving something that would have broken a lot of people. His middle brother added that Gavin handled the whole situation with more grace than anyone expected. Then Trent stood up and gave a short speech about how proud he was of Gavin for facing this crisis head-on, for testifying even though it was hard, for choosing recovery over bitterness. He said Gavin came out of this situation stronger and wiser, and that was something to celebrate. 3 weeks after sentencing, Gavin got an envelope in the mail from the State Corrections Department. Inside was a check for $37, his first restitution payment from Sadie's prison wages. The amount was so small compared to what she stole that Gavin actually laughed when he showed it to me. He said at this rate it would take decades to recover what she took, but that wasn't really the point anymore. He took that check to a frame shop and had it mounted with the date and a small note that said, "Justice doesn't always look like full restoration, but acknowledgement matters." He hung it on his apartment wall as a reminder that he survived, that the legal system validated what happened to him, that he wasn't crazy or stupid for falling for her act. 7 months after everything fell apart, Gavin's boss called him into her office. He told me later he was nervous, wondering if something was wrong, but she offered him a promotion to senior analyst with a significant raise. She said she had watched how he handled his personal crisis while maintaining his work performance, how he problem-solved under pressure and stayed professional even when his life was chaos. Those were leadership qualities the company valued, and they wanted to invest in his future there. Gavin accepted the promotion and used part of his first bigger paycheck to take Trent and me out to dinner at a nice steakhouse. He thanked us for supporting him through the worst period of his life, for believing him when he felt crazy, for helping him rebuild when everything felt broken. He seemed genuinely happy for the first time since we met Sadie, lighter somehow, like he had finally set down a weight he'd been carrying. His therapy continued twice a month, and his therapist suggested he might benefit from connecting with other survivors of emotional abuse. Gavin found a men's support group that met every other week at a community center, and he started attending their meetings. At first, he just listened to other guys share their stories of manipulation and recovery, but after a few months, he started talking about his own experience. The group leader eventually asked if he would be willing to